think we all know that the confrontation is coming one way or the other. I mean, Mark Carney's been classing things up by referencing Thucydides and Václav Havel. I mean, I thought about Shakespeare's line, like, if it be now, 'tis not to come. If it be not to come, it will be now. The readiness is all. We know eventually the United States is going to punch us in the face economically. Is this it? Probably not, but it's coming sooner or later.
You mentioned Davos there and the Prime Minister's speech, which was, you never know when something is going to cause a spark, but clearly that speech hit a nerve for so many. It was translated in French in its entirety and printed in Le Monde in France. The British were talking about it. All these middle powers were talking about it. And so if he got enough momentum through that speech, is that part of the reason why we're seeing such a major pushback and this sort of degradation of words like Governor Carney from the U.S. president?
Look, I mean, one thing is that about behavior that we're seeing from Donald Trump, and this coincides very well with Minnesota, is that they are getting weaker every week, right? Like, alienating your allies is not actually a power move. Destroying your research capacity is not actually a power move. Stopping free trade when you're the biggest economy in the world is you're making yourself less powerful all the time. And one of the consequences of that is that all these other powers are getting less and less afraid. There's less and less at stake in the United States. And that is, and I mean, obviously, they're just waking up to realize, like, oh my God, what if we actually did need these people? I mean, they would never be there for us. So, I think the turn is already well underway. I mean, Canada realized it earliest because we're closer to them and we understand America better than any other country. But, those with eyes to see can see what's going on in the United States.
Put a finer line on that for me. What is it that people are seeing, but maybe necessarily not saying?
When countries slide from democracies to autocracies, and I mean, the scene in Minnesota is straight out of the textbook of incipient civil war. I mean, the technical term for it is state violence against civilians, right? One-sided state violence against civilians. So as countries slide into authoritarianism, they become aggressive against their neighbors because it justifies their own suppression of law. That is the process that we are seeing accelerating extremely rapidly in the United States. It is actually accelerating so rapidly that it will probably reach a cataclysmic point. I mean, by the end of this year, and it is just absolutely classic. So the aggression towards places like Canada and Denmark is absolutely of a piece with the violence in Minnesota. And the processes are virtually coincidental.
Then what do you think, if you understand this, and theoretically people within the president's administration would understand that, perhaps not his closest advisors, but further afield, people would get this? Why is he doing this? What is the purpose of this degree of antagonism with your closest allies?
No, looking for purpose here, like, you can look all day, you won't find any. What we're dealing with here is you have to think about these people. They're not even operating in their own self-interest. That's what's so clear about, like, that's why diplomacy and all this stuff doesn't really make any difference, because, like, if people don't operate under the rational self-interest, then it's really impossible to judge what they're going to do. So, like, the people you say the people near him understand, the president understands, they don't at all. They have no more understanding than an addict, a junkie, like, and I think that's actually the metaphor for thinking through America, is like a very good person who's gone on a very dark drug trip, and we have to act accordingly, which is run the other way. One of the most amazing things about China, selling EVs in Canada, is no one is under the impression, even modestly, that Ford and GM can compete with them. Right? Like, I mean, that in itself is a sign of a great breakdown, that, like, American industry is non-competitive with China. Right. And so Canada, like, we have to prepare for this aggression. We have to deal with it. And we have to deal with it, I think, with firmness. But we also have to understand that aggression is a result of internal decline. Right. And we have to, like, that's the other reason we need to separate ourselves from America, is that they're falling apart. They're not an empire to be part of anymore. They're collapsing.
So you referenced that, what do we do in a situation like this? Perhaps we should run. What does that mean? How should Canada be positioning itself? What should the Prime Minister do in response to these latest threats?
Well, look, he's done that speech is a perfect encapsulation of it. I mean, you make the deals that you can with people and countries that share your values. You trade with everyone. I mean, if you're stuck between two empires that don't share your values, you have to take on a strategic ambivalence. And I think that that's absolutely something we need to do on every point. And certainly trade, but also I think increasingly militarily. I mean, the threat to Greenland is not coming from Russia or China. The threat to Greenland is coming from the United States, right? And it is very hard for us to understand because of how rapidly this is happening. But the America that we knew, the America that was a reliable democracy, is non-existent. Its constitutional orders are not. There's no restraint on the executive power, and that means there's no real constitutional restraint on the military. And what that means is not just like there's a breakdown in law and order. They're unpredictable. They're inherently unpredictable. And that means that we have to treat them as essentially, an X. We have to they're unpredictable. We need to get out of that variable as much as possible. I mean, of course, it's impossible for us to fully separate, but every step we take to distance ourselves from the United States is a step towards our own sovereignty and our own security and our own peace.
Stephen Marsh, very good to get your perspective on all of this today. Thank you so much for your time.
Pleasure, Natasha.